And we are live again. And this is more or less, ladies and gentlemen, the last presentation session before the Open Forum for Caribbean Developer Week. I am your host, Lasana Murray, yet again. This one is something I really like. I like all of them actually, but this one is right up my alley. PWAs, the next generation of web. So we're going to be talking about, well, PWAs is progressive web apps with Nicholas Mendez of the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine campus, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. He's a developer and teaching assistant. Let me just give you a brief description of Nicholas as he provided. He's a teaching assistant for web technology courses at UWI. He has also done web development for local and international companies and seen success at local coding competitions such as WSIS, Hack Against Hunger, DevCA, CodeSprint, and Telios CodeJam. So, Nicholas, I know you've been in the chat room a few times. Welcome to the actual.
Thank you. Thanks. Good to be here.
Okay. Okay, so take it away.
All right. Hi, everybody. So I'm giving this presentation on progressive web apps. It's a bit of content there, but bear with me. So without further ado, let's start. All right. So, but before we get to PWAs, let's just talk about like so many reasons or so many background of why this PWA thing came about, right? Let's look at engagement across the mobile platforms. You have websites and mobile applications, right? So for sure, people spend more time on mobile apps, but web applications gather twice the audience, right? These numbers kind of make sense because web has a further reach, obviously, because you just need a browser to get started. But mobile apps can offer more features for repeated engagement and retention, and they're always available on the device, regardless of internet connection. Okay, so here's the problem. Mobile apps are capable, but web has the larger audience. But would it be nice to have both? What if we can add more capabilities to the web? Right, now this is exactly what PWA is for. Right, they're simply web applications which provide some of the capabilities from mobile apps by leveraging new browser features. Okay, so that begs the question, what are PWAs? Well, today, web applications can do many things. They can control the device vibration, they can do motion, they can access certain sensors. But for your website to be a progressive web app, it must at the very least show these 4 properties, which is fire. It can't be a PWA talk without mentioning this acronym. It's very popular across the different presentations. And it's an acronym for fast, integrated, reliable, and engaging. These features are possible with a technology called the Service Worker, which is a standardized specification for web browsers that was first drafted by the Google engineer by the name of Jake Archibald. So firstly, fast. Mobile is fast. PWAs can do pre-caching and runtime caching. I'll talk a little bit of what the difference of those two are in my demonstration. And they're also built with performance in mind, and the idea is to utilize best web practices. There are many tools available to developers for auditing performance of the application, such as web page tests and page speed insights, as well as Lighthouse. I will show Lighthouse to you in a bit, right? And they even suggest optimizations to make your web app more performant. Secondly, we have integrated, right? Web browsers can actually tell when you're on a PWA, and it will allow users to install the application on the device. This feature is called Add to Home Screen. So on the left, you see the experience on iOS. On the right, you see the experience on Android. On Android, as soon as you visit a PWA, it should give up a little banner asking you to add it to your screen. But Google is changing that behavior a little bit, so it's less intrusive. Right? From that point on, when you add that PWA to your home screen, right, it now lives on the device and actually behaves like a real app, right? That integrated experience is key to making that website feel an app, and it certainly helps revisits, right? The application is also available to be launched offline regardless of the internet connection. Thirdly, we have reliable. So it's the web, right? This is a big shift for web development, right? Because first and foremost, when you build a website, obviously the user, you can assume the user has an internet access, but that's no longer necessarily the case, right? If we want our app to be reliable, we have to focus on something called an offline first experience, right? Service workers allow you to do just that by actually configuring the browser to do certain caching and pre-caching, right? So pre-caching is basically, well, what you need to run a website, what you need to load a website to your browser, you need that index.html, some CSS, and maybe some JavaScript, right? But if we could save these files on the browser, then we never don't really need to hit the network a second time when we need them. So that's what pre-caching is. Runtime caching is simply caching any data or any requests that your application would have made during the life cycle of its runtime, right? So this means that the app can still deliver value to customers, right? Because you can actually launch that app and save content between sessions, right? Returning users never need to see an offline error messages, right? No more of that dinosaur. Right? This kind of experience is what we come to expect from mobile applications. It should still be useful regardless of the network condition. And lastly, we have engagement, right? The number one way to do engagement is push notifications, right? On your web right now, yeah, I think you would see some websites as soon as you go on, it kind of hits you with this ask notification permission, but push notifications, when done correctly, is the number one way to improve engagement and retention on mobile. So the web can do push as well, but just make sure you give context before asking. Really, you want the user to opt into the app settings and not just jump them with, hey, do you want to enable push notifications without even knowing what the website is about? This is another key feature in the developing a very app-like experience. So progressive. It came from the whole term of progressive enhancement. So it means your application will deliver a core functionality no matter what user agent, because we do understand there are many different browsers available. I seem to have left out IE. That's my error. That wasn't intentional, right? That's Edge there. But it doesn't matter what user agent they use. Basically, if a feature is not available for that user agent, it'll simply be disabled. But you can actually deliver the actual core functionality of the app, right? Web browsers are periodically updated to support more features. And at the moment, all the popular browsers, at least the ones on screen, do support that add to home screen and offline mode. Apple now just added PWA support, the service worker spec, with its update iOS 11.3 released on March 29. So you might be thinking, am I saying to do away with native apps? Do we just build PWAs now? Well, it depends, right? Like most developer questions, that is the answer. We are technologists, and we get to make decisions based on our needs, right? So echoing the sentiments in Rohan's talk earlier this week, it's all about choosing the right tool for the right problem. So native apps is still the number one way to squeeze the most performance out of your app, right? And they also have exclusive access to the hardware due to security concerns with the web actually touching these things, right? If you don't need these, however, you can actually look at hybrid approaches like Ionic and React Native, where you can use web technologies and plugins to talk to your native hardware. And finally, a little along the line, they have PWAs, which can actually do some of these things like push notifications and offline and multimedia. However, it's a little different with PWAs. You don't have to go to a store for them. They're still a website at the end of the day, but they can actually move onto the user's device when you install them, right? So it brings me to another thing we have to look at when we think about native apps. We saw earlier that indeed engagement is 16 times higher on mobile apps than on web. But if your app is not in this top list, that engagement figure might be a little different. Contrast this with the idea of the URL that web introduced. With some characters and a click, users can be served rich interactive content with no installation required. This frictionless experience is available to PWAs, along with the advantage of being compatible with any device with a browser and its shareability. There's a comic from XKCD where the author was lamented, installing apps is really a pain, right? It'd be nice if there was a way to have all the apps installed and quickly download and run them. And he realized that's kind of what web browsers do, right? A lot of applications that we typically thought were just for devices are now moving to the cloud. You know, you can do your email and a lot of stuff. Google Keep and a bunch of different apps are now available on the web. So another thing to look at is the customer journey, right? Imagine a user sees an ad for your app. You have a native app, right? You'll direct them to an app store. Then with some clicks and waiting, it'll be installed and launched, right? And the user can finally get to your content. Now, if you contrast it with a PWA, where the content is actually on the website, referencing the ad, there are a lot less loops for them to go through. The user can actually browse what the app has to offer, and then if they want to, install it and then opt into features. Because the thing when you're installing an app or a native app, you have to actually go through all the permissions beforehand. But with web apps, you can actually ask or allow the user to opt into the features after they actually visited the app, right? So these are the things we should really consider given our Caribbean context, especially when you look at the cost for developing native apps as well, right? And the regional attitudes generally that we have towards software around here, right? Web apps are typically less costly to develop. And if you can minimize costs, you will get increased returns on investment, right? So now we want to look at some case studies. So we don't need to really look far. M-Fisheries provides a suite of applications that address major pain points within our local fishing industry. Right? M-Fisheries have their web application Fewer enhanced to be a PWA. It's very early in their implementation, but they've already done add to home screen support and offline capabilities. Because the application is content is saved, the pre-cache functionality is available even when offline, and revisits to the site load faster. This is especially important in their case, because it allows fishermen to access the site even while sailing through the Caribbean Sea. Now going across the Atlantic to India, largest ticketed firm, Book My Show, 50 million monthly visitors. They have recently released a progressive web application, The app has all the standard PWA features, but it's worth noting that the size of their PWA is 54 times smaller than their Android app and 180 times smaller than the iOS app. So Book My Show saw an overwhelming 80% increase in their conversions, which means drastically more ticket sales. The PWA takes less than 2.94 seconds to load and enables checkout within 30 seconds. Right, so that's just a quote by the assistant general manager. And on the right, you see a little fast demo of how the checkout experience is. Our last case study, right, is Twitter. The popular platform for finding out what's been going on around the world has over 328 million active users, 80% of which are on mobile. In April 2017, Twitter released their progressive web application, Twitter Lite, with the main goals of instant loading, improve engagement, and lower data consumption. Now, traditionally, Twitter's websites saw difficulty in re-engaging their users on mobile. Now, with the add to home screen support, they've seen 250,000 unique users launch their site from the home screen 4 times a day. They've also done push notifications, which is delivered 10 million times a day. Needless to say, Twitter Lite is a huge success and is the #1 way to use Twitter today. The PWA has greater reach, engagement, and performance than their mobile apps. When added to the home screen, it is 97% smaller than its Android counterpart and 99.8% smaller than Twitter for iOS. So PWAs first hit the scene in 2015. Since then, many companies across the world have adopted PWAs, like the ones we just mentioned. But there's also Forbes and Alibaba and Expedia. But if you're not convinced, I'll just add some of the others up to February this year. Microsoft has also come on board offering support for PWAs in the Windows Store. This means your website can appear as a first-class computer application on Windows PCs, open up an entirely new audience. So, just to recap, we have compared mobile and web, learned about progressive web apps, compared them to mobile, and looked at its adoption. hopefully by now, you share the enthusiasm I have for this technology, right? And I'm just going to go into a demo and basically show you how you can move from a normal app to a PWA. Basically, it boils down to just adding two main files, that service worker file we talked about, and an extra file called the manifest, right? So let's see, I'm going to go into my favorite editor here, WebStorm. Right. Actually, before I do that, I think I want to actually show you all the application. Right. So let's see. So we have an application here. I call it the Jammers Calendar. It's basically your calendar app, right? It does a REST call, pulls some data, and it just formats them into these cards over here, right? When working with debugging with PWAs, you want to use Chrome. At least right now, it has some really nice tools. Let me just hit this to reload and make sure everything is loaded, right? And it actually shows you, okay, well, here's my service worker file, sw.js. This is the service worker is set to be registered. It says active and running. So it's actually doing work for you right here, right? The Chrome Dev tools actually allows you to simulate how the app would work offline, right? So if you see over here, it says online. If I take this button here, the app can actually monitor the network state and then tell the users offline. This is important because we actually want to test how it works when it's offline, right? At the side here is the cache storage, right? And here's where you see the pre-cache. Right? The pre-cache is what's storing all of the static content to actually render the page. So you can see now cache storage, our index.html is here. All our images and everything needed for this actual page is actually pre-cached. So just to show you something here, if I go to, say, this GitHub page, I open up DevTools and actually simulate offline and hit a reload, a page isn't going to load. But for PWA, such as Jammers Cal, which is offline and I hit a reload, the page still actually works, right? Even the REST endpoints, because I have a cache over here called the events cache, and the actual Ajax call to these events data is actually stored in the cache. So I don't really need to hit the network for the data that was already retrieved in a previous session, right? Lasana, just stop me for going too fast, right?
Yeah, actually, I want to ask about that. So there's a cache for the REST API. Is that something that you have to set up, or
Yep.
is that done automatically?
That's all done by a service worker. I will go through how we actually configure it.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's called the runtime caching, because that means these are requests done during the actual runtime in the application, and you set the name here and it's all stored in this JSON right here. This is called pre-caching because it means when the service worker is started, it actually knows this content to see and actually going to save it in the browser. Right? Over here is a toggle which I use to enable notifications. I'm going to leave it on for now because I want to use the same token to actually demo notifications. Right? But the idea is when you push this toggle, you'll get a token to uniquely identify this client, and you will push it to your server here. So over here I have a bunch of tokens to clients who would have opted into notifications before. And from here I can use this token to send push notifications to the client. All right, so this is Jammers Calendar. You can add events, but we won't be demoing right now. But let's look at the code, right? So I built this with the idea for people to just, by the way, this is on GitHub, so I'll probably share the link later. All right, the idea here is just to get directly to the code that makes this app a PWA. So I didn't build it in any framework, any library. If anything, it was just some Java ES6 code. Right, so here's just some setup. I'm just going to really gloss through this at a really high level, and then really focus to the service worker stuff. Right, so I'm using, let me backtrack a little bit to my slides. I'm using the Firebase, right, as mentioned in earlier talks. It's basically a platform which is really by Google, really focused on developing mobile and web apps, right? We're going to use it for our push notifications, right? That has a nice library which you include in your service worker that makes setting up push notifications really simple, right? And then we're using Workbox, right? Workbox is a CLI tool which actually helps us build our service worker file and configure it a little nicer than doing it by the bare bones, right? So going back over in the code, right? So this is my main JavaScript file. I initialize Firebase here. I enable Firebase messaging. I just have an array for events, which renders them to the screen. I have the endpoints for pulling my events and the endpoints for storing my tokens right here, right? This stuff here basically shows, all right, the cards that we saw on the screen, offline mode and online mode. This is something new to web development. You actually need to determine how the app will display when it's offline. So you have to kind of look at and monitor the network state and see how you communicate that to the user, right? This here basically asks the user for notifications permission, right? But that was already granted before for the demo. What you really want to look at is basically this line. For a PWA, you can, most people basically put this code in the index of HTML. I like to put it here so it's all in one place. But all you're really doing is calling this standard web API call navigator service worker.get registration. I should more highlight this one, right? The name of our service worker file is sw.js, so that's what you put over here. Scope is just something you use to determine the scope of the service worker, and that is really relative to how you actually host the website. Because if you have a subdirectory and another app in there, that's what scope is really used to manage, right? But the main thing you want to get, after you call this get registration, you get a registration object, which we will then use later to actually integrate with the Firebase library. So that's why it takes this callback function called readyFund. So whether the service worker was already active or not, we will pass the registration object to readyFund. So that's all this if is doing. If there is a controller, then get registration from the controller. If it's not there, well, let's register this service worker and give me back the registration object, right? On line 121 here, we just want to see if service worker is supported, but in all popular browsers, they are there, so but we're gonna do that anyway. And we wanna make sure that the actual app is loaded before we do anything. Okay, it's just a best practice. Now going down here is where we actually call the register service worker function that we defined a few lines earlier, right? We get that registration object, which we pass to the callback function. We pull our events, right? And messaging is basically a object that we got from the Firebase library. So that's it over here. That messaging is FB messaging. So we're letting messaging use the service worker object that we got from the window, right? Everything on here is just basically log a message if we ever receive a notification, and stuff over here is for handling the tokens, right, with the toggle. Now the next file you want to look at is our service worker source, right? Here's where, well, basically we're using Workbox to build our service worker, but we can let Workbox use a source file if you want to add some configuration to it, right? So that's the purpose of this file over here. We import the Workbox library because it's a library for actually building service worker as well as a CLI tool. We include Firebase and we include our keys, because to talk to Firebase, they'll give you some keys to actually talk to the SDK, right? So we initialize the Firebase library and we just enable messaging. And this is legit all you need to do to enable push notifications on your app, really. Once you call a Firebase messaging on your service worker, you're more or less good to go, right? One thing I need to mention though, I said there were two main files for your PWA. You have that service worker, but you also have a very important file, which is called the manifest. It's basically a JSON file, right? Which loads the, let me go over here. Basically a JSON file, which you can then determine the theme color and the presentation of the app when it's added to the home screen or whatnot. So you need that manifest, that JSON, and you're gonna need that service worker as well. So I'm gonna go back and put this app online just to test, right? Give it a reload. Let's go back in the code. Right, so over here is what you do to enable the pre-caching. You see pre-caching route, and here's where we actually set up the runtime caching to our events endpoint.
Okay, Nicholas. Let me just interrupt. I think you may, for the benefit of anyone viewing this, especially after the fact and unaware, you
Yeah.
may have to explain what the workbox library using there is, and probably a little explanation as to what role that Firebase library plays.
Yeah. So there has to be a server that actually handles distributing the notifications to the clients, right? So I'm using the formerly known Google Cloud Messaging platform. It's now called Firebase Cloud Messaging, right? And that's why I need the Firebase library for with my API key. So it allows me to distribute push notifications to all my clients, right? So that's what calling Firebase messaging there is all about, right? Workbox now, I'm going to just demo the CLI tool for Workbox. What you basically want to do is have a Workbox config and a config JavaScript file, right? You give it the path of your source JavaScript file as we see here, and we give it the path of the output. So the sw.js that we saw registered in the browser is actually created by Workbox, and this is how we specify its name and location, right? And over here is where we say what kind of files that we want to pre-cache, right? So you want to look in the PWA directory, which is basically the root of the project, or the root of the, I should say the build, right, of the actual code that will be saved on the server, right? And you can say, I want to cache all JavaScript files, images, fonts, CSS, and the JSON. This is for the manifest.json. When you do that and you run a certain command, it's called workbox inject manifest, it will then take this source file and generate your sw.js file over here, right? You will notice they look very much very similar, right? But what Workbox did was actually populate this array over here, pre-cache and route, and actually list out all the actual static files that would be in your pre-cache. So when you have this up, the service worker would, and then you deploy, right? So I have it actually running on localhost here. The service worker will be loaded in the browser, and you'd see the web app, the actual progressive web app being, well, sorry, the service worker is actually running here with the status, right? So that's what Workbox does for me. It helps me configure that service worker. Let me just go back over here to what I have, routing. Basically, I'm saying this endpoint, events endpoint, which is here, which pulls the events JSON. I want you to cache that. So any request sent to that endpoint, I want you to stuff that into my events cache. I call it events cache over here, right? You can also supply plugins where you configure like how you want the cache to expire and the maximum number of entries. So just to see, this is called the events cache. When I go inside my service worker here and I go inside my cache, you can see the events cache with the same name over here, and it actually has the events data. So that's how you configure runtime caching and pre-caching as well, right? So pre-caching was whatever you set up inside here, right? The glob patterns of the files that you would want to pre-cache. So that takes me to the last thing I would like to demonstrate, which is, well, really the web notifications, right? So we saw that over here, we have tokens for every client who opted into our notifications. We can then push a message using the Firebase Cloud Messaging REST API to clients, right? So I could send it directly to the token, or if I want to do a multi-class, I would then register the token under topic. So then I just need to send messages to topic, and every token that's associated with it will receive the messages. All right, so I'm using Postman over here. I have the same token put here, and I can send whatever. So this will basically simulate my server sending messages to my client, right? So push notifications will only appear, the app is closed or in the background. So I'm just going to minimize it here. I'm going to send a message. Lasana, you have any ideas of something to send? Any message at all? Hello?
Yeah, how about hello world?
Yeah, I'm thinking the same thing. All right, so we want to send hello world to our clients. Notifications is enabled and the window is minimized. And I push send over there. You get this nice notification, Jammers call notification, hello world, coming from the service worker that is registered in localhost. Right, so of course the person needed to opt into this for it to actually show. This is a standard use of the Google Cloud Messaging, Google Firebase Cloud Messaging API. You'll need to have a token and you send it to whoever you want to receive it, or you can send it to a topic as well, right? You can customize this notification where you can change the icon. You can put a badge for it when it shows on mobile. You can even set like buttons and actions, so you can actually have a call to action when the user interacts with the notification. So I think I run through everything pretty fast. Let me see if I have anything else here. Well,
yeah, because I have a gang of questions for you actually.
Okay.
Coming all from, but I'm still monitoring the chat.
Sure. So I said PWAs don't really they don't really live on stores, but in any way people have made kind of app stores for PWAs. So the first one was like PWA Rocks. And it's just a collection, a bunch of PWAs that you could submit them. I didn't really invite you all to check it out and see what's possible. Paper Planes is really nice, a really nice port of the Android app. So it showed that you can actually probably do some gaming in PWAs, right? Another one is AppScope and PWA Directory. PWA Directory is really nice in that it actually audits your PWA every day, so you can see how it's doing performance, right? I actually have an app on App Directory on PW Directory as well. One last thing. Let's see. PW Directory, right. I talked about earlier that there are ways to audit your progressive web app or really any application. In Chrome, they have it baked in. One of the tools is called Lighthouse, right? So here's a deployed version of the app. And if you go in audits over here, you can run audits for performance, accessibility, and progressive web apps. So I ran an audit just before the presentation, and it shows that I got 88% score in performance, and it passed all audits for a PWA. But it will actually tell you what you can do to increase your performance. So here it actually lets you know, well, you have the render blocking style sheets. If you change that, you can get better performance, right? And that's basically all I have for today. Thanks to everyone for listening. I hope I didn't run through it too fast. I hope it's understandable. There will be relevant links to the project as well.
Well, yeah, don't close us off.
Yeah. I'm here though till I.
But wait, I think I need an echo from you. So you have it with twice or something?
Sorry?
I'm getting an echo. Do you have the... Hello?
Yep.
Okay, cool, great. Yeah, so this honestly seems like, to me, very complicated to basically push notifications to the desktop. But we'll break down that and get into that. Can you first explain, for those of us who don't actually use push notification, what push notifications are, and probably if you can a little bit about the actual spec or whatever, or if there exists one, because I know, for instance, on Linux-based machines on Ubuntu, there's actually a binary called, I think, notify send, which gives you the same effect basically, and some applications use that. So maybe you could talk a little bit about what push notifications are, and from the web perspective of what they are and whatnot.
Yeah. So maybe I should start here. It's a really nice site. It's called caniuse.com, and it tells you what standard browser features and how they're compatible with other user agents, right? So I'm basically using the web. Let me see if I can find that here. The web push API. it's more the service worker API, right? And basically, parts of the service week API spec came out of the web notifications API, or if I could find that, right? So it's really a standard. I tried to implement it directly, but it was way easier to just use Firebase. I was getting some really inconsistent behavior in my earlier experimentation, right? And the notification API is simply to send a push notification as you usually were accustomed to on a mobile app or onto the web browser, right? So any message at all you want to send to the user, once they have granted permission, you can get that message up as you've seen over there. Send another one, see if it comes in, right? And it just displays just like this, and it's a really nice way to send reminders or get back engagement to your customers, let them know, hey, you haven't done this in a while, or have a special view, right? If you want to see other use cases, I have another app here, right? This is my first PWA I ever made. I call it the Pyman app. The biggest problem, well, it's not the biggest problem, but a big problem on campus is that there's a lot of stuff to eat on campus when you're really doing those all-nighters, except for this Pyman who comes up on campus and, saves us from starvation. But he's a little intermittent. We never really know when he's on campus. So this app here is just here to notify users as the Pyman that what time I'll be on campus and how long. So what I really did is just allow the Pyman to set a time when he will be there, coming and leaving. And when the server time reaches close to that time, it notifies all users who opted into notifications that, hey, the Pyman is on campus in 5 minutes. And that was done with Firebase Functions, which is Google's first, well, it's still in beta, but Google offering of cloud functions and functions service.
Okay. You're still there, right? The audio dipping out a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you still there?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, right. So that being said, then, because I want to try to help people kind of understand the scenario as well, because as you mentioned, web is a little bit different than say Android, where you have like that permission dialog and you basically give Android apps full control of your phone. And with recent models, you could revoke some of that. But with a web, the permissions come incrementally, right?
Yeah.
So
want me to demo that?
Like what? Oh, like the request for permission to do something. But I think a lot of people will be familiar with the request for push notification, so you could show that because a lot of sites use it these days.
Yeah, but the problem with a lot of sites is that they ask for the request as soon as the page loads, right? You're asking for a commitment from the user before the user even know what your site is about. And the problem with that is when the user first declines that permission, right, they are not able to actually reverse that unless they like go into the site settings like I'm going to do here and actually change it, right? So I'm going to change this to asks, right? Ask me to reload, right? Permissions would be off here, right? Let me make sure I'm still online. Yeah, when I click this, then you have a button. You let the user actually opt into permission, to notifications, and then you can let them click allow. When you do that allow, a new token will then be available on my endpoint, which then I'll then use to actually send notifications to them. So this is the way web notifications should be done. Let the user opt into them.
So you said a token will be available. This token is provided to you by the browser or by Firebase?
It's the browser. That's still part of the standard implementation. It's let me see if I can get that code. I think it's provided by the browser, right? But I think I probably use the Firebase library to make interacting with that API a little easier.
Because I'm thinking to myself, like when you request permissions to use the camera, you just get permission to use the camera, right? That's it. You don't receive a token. But the token-based approach will be a much better model because at some point, browser vendors could allow users to actually, probably set an expiration date on when a site no longer use like your camera or something like that.
Yeah, that is true. Well, it just seems that the notification API was just done with tokens, but I think cameras is just opt-in or well, I think with cameras you could actually disable it too. You know, it's a little easier to disable it here because is that it? Okay. So, all right. Yeah, you could just click over here and you could probably block it, but notifications is not that simple.
Right. Okay. So the service workers now. Let me help people understand that because I myself never really played around with it. So let me just read what MDM and MDN has here, right? Their description is service workers essentially act as proxy servers that sit between web applications, the browser, and the network when available. They are intended, among other things, to enable the creation of effective online experiences, intercept network requests, and take appropriate action based on whether the network is available and update assets residing on the server. They will also allow access to push notification and background sync APIs. So this is me personally. That sounds like a whole bunch of stuff just stuffed into one standard one API.
That is true. That's why there's like only partial support for certain things. So the background sync API, only Chrome does that, right? But that's a really nice API. I really like to. The background sync APIs you see only Chrome, Android Chrome, the other ones, but what that basically does, right? JavaScript does it, right? And it's a really compelling experiences. I know native can do it as well, but it's the first time you see something like this for the web, right? Say I launch the app in offline mode, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, I can't create a new event because it's offline. But background sync API lets you to save that request when you're offline, right? And the user could forget about it. Because in the background, if that phone ever gets an internet connection, it will then send that request forward.
But I mean, so I think about this a lot, right? Because there's a class of applications I would like to work on, some for profit, some actually just for in the interest of public good and whatnot. And anytime I try to think about an offline online strategy for the web and mobile web, it always kind of, as I get into it, always seems kind of complicated, right? Because with what you have here, you have to, you know, your application as you code, and you have to code your application to be aware that it may be offline, as opposed to you just code your application towards business logic, and you know the underlying systems and whatnot just kind of figure that out. So what I'm gonna ask then, because how I look at it would be like you would want some kind of basically buffering, well, caching basically of outgoing requests, and also incoming data. But then if you're dealing with like multi-user access and whatnot, if one user is offline and wants to modify some information, and another user is online and is modifying the same information, you kind of have to have a strategy that will allow the server to merge that data, right?
Yeah, that is true. That is true.
So have you like given thought to that? Do you have any opinions on or strategies in designing that? Doesn't have to be anything.
Yeah. Well, I never even thought about a use case like that. So if I was building an app where I would do a background sync, something like that, and that race condition, I just have authorization set up in a way that you could only edit data relevant to you and data relevant to the other user. But if there's something like a clash, I really like to think about the experience where you notify the user, hey, he suggested this edit, both users, and they suggested that edit, and they somehow come to agreement on how to merge it or, you know, handle that kind of conflict. That makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So I think I understand the gist of the service workers. Like, truth be told, I would like to sometimes I look at some of these web specs and whatnot, and I just like to be in the room screaming at everybody as to what they're doing. But then you understand the process already, it's tedious, and there's probably already a lot of screaming going on behind the scenes. So, but right, this is one of the big things I wanted to ask you about, because you were one of the first persons I know personally, or even so actually, talking a lot about the PWA stuff, right? I ignored it for a while, but as things go, eventually they just happen to be in your face and you pay attention to tech news and whatnot. I want to know, well, I've paid attention to what you said here, but I recall Firefox OS. Yes, that was a thing at some point in time.
Yeah, yeah.
And to me, this just seems like, okay, Firefox OS failed, and we're just going to do what they more or less were doing, because I actually did try out the, Firefox OS allowed you to write a web app.
Right.
It actually took permission. Yeah, wrap it up and made it into a mobile app that you could use. So maybe you could talk about the differences and whatnot between those two approaches.
I'm not really, that sounds cool. That really sounds familiar. I'm not really, and I don't really know much about how Firefox OS does it, but that actually sounds about how Google Chrome actually handles PWAs, because when you add a PWA to the home screen, it creates a web APK. So it actually looks and feels like a actual native app. Actually, it does make a native app wrapper fit, right? You can see the version, you can go about the author, and you can uninstall it, just like you uninstall a native app, right? But I think the difference here is that the service worker was a web standard, right? So it's something that actually contributed to the evolution of the web overall as a platform, because now all browsers have actually decided to adopt this standard. So it's no matter what you're on, you're supposed to actually get this experience, as opposed to Firefox OS. You'll be building a website, you're thinking, well, if that client is on Firefox OS, you get the web app, but everybody else, you don't really know.
But actually, I think they were pushing quite heavily to standardize various stuff in Firefox OS. And one thing I remember particularly, which seems to have died, but would have made using web for mobile much more, I guess, much more fun experience than using regular native mobile, was there was an API for peer connections. I don't know if you're familiar with that. But that would have essentially allowed a web app to actually make almost native, like actual, connections, like you would do in C, like open up a connection to, I guess, a Unix socket or something like that. And that would have allowed, I think, the web apps to be able to connect to native devices, like, let's say, like, actually set up servers or connect to remote databases and whatnot. So like, instead of everything being pushed through HTTP, you can actually now create an actual TCP socket, basically, I think was the point.
Wow. Yeah, and I've really heard of that. I'll look into that. That sounds really interesting. Well, in terms of peer-to-peer, another website I like to look at is what web can do today, right? And it basically tells you how is that gap between web and mobile looking, right? So you've seen you can do payments and a little geolocation, but it also, weirdly enough, has the NFC, USB, and Bluetooth. So it means you can actually, well, at least it seems to me that you can actually have a web app, make a Bluetooth connection to another web app, and actually get some communication happening there.
Oh, actually, that's a pretty useful site. So it's what web can do today.
Yep, really nice, really nice. Always go back to it. What I really would like to do is periodic sync, which basically is you can schedule the app to do something in the background based on the time. It's not there yet, but then you could do things like alarms and stuff on a PWA. It's not there just yet.
Yeah, I was making a comment in Caribbean developers recently that it seems like web is king in the Caribbean. I starting to believe that more and more because I hardly hear these days about people. Even when I hear about people who do like native application development, whether it's
Yeah,
mobile
but
or desktop, they
yeah.
still do some web something in there. And
But people who just full mobile,
say that again.
as opposed to people who are just dedicated mobile app developers.
Yeah, I don't think because I know at some point there were external forces kind of encouraging the mobile craze, native mobile craze in the region. There were the little hackathons and whatnot and competitions or whatnot. But I think it's interesting because I think to me it just make the web just makes a lot more sense, especially for most of us are small island states and the platforms we use are not really developed here and the machines we use not really developed here. So the web kind of gives you that level kind of playing field where you don't have to pay somebody, for instance, to build a web app. You might have to pay to be in a store, but you don't have to pay license fees to start developing web applications,
Yeah.
right?
So that was part of the presentation, right? You just took that out. No, free and open web could publish on it for free. You don't need to pay licenses. I think a big thing that's kind of hindering mobile app development, at least locally, is that you can't really set up a merchant account for Google Play. I think, at least not right now, right? I see some people do workarounds where they set it up in Jamaica or something, but you can't really have a merchant account to actually sell apps on the Play market. You basically just have to have them free. So I think that hinders us a bit.
What do you mean, like not having a domestic app market?
I think like if you want to publish an app on the App Store, Google Play, can't you don't have the merchant, you can't have a merchant account to actually have that app cost money, Google Play. It has to be a free app. Right? I think our region is just not supported on that.
Oh, we can't get paid. We can't get paid for publishing our apps on the App Store. You're saying we can't?
Yeah, I think you can't. I'm not too sure on this, but last time I checked, you can't publish an app that's actually costs money to download.
Oh, geez, you serious? Yeah,
Yes, I
that's
think
horrible.
that's a major problem. So you need a merchant account, and that merchant account is not supported in Trinidad. So I see people get like a business registered in Jamaica or something, and then they get a merchant account there, and then they could then deploy apps with a cost in Trinidad. But well, say in Trinidad in commerce, but they develop it in Trinidad, if you know what I mean.
Well, just a update because I just googled up on the peer connection. It seems that that is actually part of the
Facebook.
Web RTC standard now. So it's there for those browsers that support that kind of real-time communication.
Oh, that sounds familiar by warranties.
Yeah. Okay, so I actually have not seen much activity in chat this round. But I know you mentioned to me you are just let me see if I could just pull up the message. But you mentioned to me the Google.
Yes. I was supposed to put that in the slide, but I put it out. We could pull up that. I'll just pull it up on Meetup. Right. So if you're interested in learning more of this speaker stuff, I know it's a little steep learning curve. Well, there's a community out there in the Google developer group. So let me just go and Meetup. Right. Google developer groups is basically a developer community around the world, and Google has different chapters, right? So me and a couple of others are organized or have applied to the program and get accepted, and we're officially supported by Google to have a local chapter here. So it's going to be GDG Port of Spain. We'll hear about that a little later, but we'll be doing stuff. We'll definitely be doing stuff in PWAs. I'll be throwing some tutorials on code labs as well as Google I/O extended events, right? So what that is Google. Everybody, I hope you're aware of Google I/O, which is a really cool event every year that Google throws to show off their products and technologies. It's good for consumers and developers alike. But the GDG, the Google Developer Groups, actually have their own local events, which are called I/O Extended, and they have certain content which they actually give to those groups. So they have their own version of the I/O locally, right? Yeah, so that's you should really check us out. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and all setting things up. We're gonna plan to have a launch event soon.
Right, so you more because I think this group was around before, so you more or less took over, right?
They were no, it took a while to set up, right? So I applied all the way in December to the program, and then they let me know of other people who are already in the process, and they basically put us together, and now we're as a joint committee actually getting this thing running. And then there was another group that tried before. So I remember I reached out to Jo from Caribbean Tech Forum, and she said that she tried with Anil, and she well, I really talk to her every now and again in terms of how to organize events, because she really threw some really good events on Caribbean Tech Forum. So she's kind of helping us out, advising us and mentoring us as we go.
Okay, that sounds excellent. Yeah, so progressive web apps. I think, well, let me ask you this as well too. I like to get people's feedback on this. Do you think Google is going to abandon the current method of development on Android and just kind of like eventually end up going full force behind like the Chrome OS and the progressive web apps and those kind of things? Because Android is a bit messy.
Nah, I don't think they will ever stop Android. If anything, they're kind of doubling down. So they see the recently released Flutter. They just want to really make it easier to have a lot of options to build apps and experiences that everyone would enjoy, I think. So Android is one way, hybrid is one way. Flutter is now in for another way to do Android and iOS. I think the more choices there are, the better we are, better for us technologists to basically come up with solutions.
Yeah, I think you could actually run Android apps on some versions of the Chrome.
Yeah, I kind of want a Chromebook for that.
Yeah. Actually, in the early days of another operating system, the Ubuntu mobile experience, they decided to stick with like the typical Python kind of Linux style development stuff. And I don't know why, but they should have gone like straight to web, because if they had, I think they would have still been around right now, and they would be kind of benefiting from the fact that other vendors, even though they have their native stuff and whatnot, are actually investing in mobile web apps. So it just makes sense.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, Nicholas, thank you so much for not closing off Caribbean Developer Week, but being the last session that we have for Caribbean Developer Week, talking to us about this interesting topic and really taking the time to basically show that community support and that interest and love in your field and profession.
Yeah, sure, anytime. Thanks for having me. It's really pleasure to be a part and take part. I said I was the last person to basically give me the most time, but then I kind of set myself up, because then I subjected myself to see everyone else on, and then I kind of hope I gotta come good, but hope it was all right.
All right. So for all those listening and watching, we have just one more session, which is gonna be tomorrow, Saturday at 2:30 or 14:30 UTC -4. That's gonna be the 2-hour open forum kind of panel discussion. Hangouts will allow us to have about, I think, 10 participants maximum. So anyone interested in that, look out for the link and try to get in early. And we're just gonna have some discussions on the themes for Caribbean Developer Weekend. Basically, we're gonna be talking about how we can move forward as an industry, and probably recap a little bit on these sessions we have if we get the speakers coming back for that, because we had some interesting sessions, some comments and whatnot. So thank you all for tuning in. It's been a pleasure. Have a good afternoon, or evening rather.